you so much for this kind invitation for the protection of consumers and advertisements in particular. Any advertisement agent or any satellite channel, for them, advertisements are a real main source, in fact, of income, particularly the unpaid channels. Because the unpaid ones had their main source of funding for them or resources is the advertisement, and they always follow up, and they are so much keen to get to provide all the best for the manufacturer or the advertiser company, because this means money coming to you as a channel if they are satisfied. Also, with regard to misleading advertisement or deceptive advertisement, usually it's some sort of informal channels. Even if we go to the report, back to the report of 2017 issued by the Consumer Protection Authority, you'll find that the complaints of advertisements are coming what we call in Egypt under table. In fact, we call it under stairs channels. This is the way we call it. So much informal, so much deregulated, and so usually they open just a channel by their own whims, and they display drama without any licenses, without any protection for IP, without purchasing or renting it for some time. It's just stolen films and stolen drama, and they open a channel, and then advertisements come, and usually these are misleading advertisements. So they have a problem with misadvertising, and they have a problem with the intellectual property of the drama and the different kind of artistic products that are being displayed or aired on these channels. Also, when it's usually advertisements that are relevant to health, is similar to the sexual relevant vitamins, relevant to fitness and obesity, things like this, and some appliances, some electric appliances. This is mainly the matter of concern of these, or the matter of interest of these advertisers who are misleading, and maybe the consumer protection can do something, in fact, without over restriction that may be de-appetite or discourage the manufacturer who is advertising or the supplier who is advertising at the end of the day. So, for example, now even in music, if you are using stolen music, the consumer protection can see whether they are really allowed, if they have bought the or they paid the royalties that are relevant to this intellectual property or not. So if I'm a producer and I would have any advertisement, maybe my advertisement needs to be licensed in some way. So the consumer protection may be doing something like the main initial steps before advertising, so that at least the product itself would be accredited in some way or certified some way by the consumer protection or the advertisement itself. Another important thing that's relevant to the coordination between the Supreme Communication or Media Council and the Consumer Protection Council. The Supreme Media Council, they have a role to play when it comes to the what's relevant to the media content. In fact, they need to work on this. So when speaking today about this authority or the Consumer Protection Authority, we speak about 150 humans working on in this authority. We said that it's so much short-handed while being overworked. So why don't they deal with the Supreme Media Council because of such kind of channels, unregulated or unregistered and unlicensed channels? These kind of channels, how you'll be able to reach them as a consumer protection? This is something we need to do. The observatory, this is another thing. The Consumer Protection Authority has a very strong and robust observatory, so they can like switch between channels and see what's going on. And there was one company also for polling, in fact. It was a very good company that was providing this, Ipsos, in fact. So you can go to, you can resort to Ipsos and see the advertisements, all the automotive advertisements yesterday in this specific channel. So if you are not able to establish your own observatory, outsource to Ipsos or any other observatories who can provide you with such services for specific payments. And there are people who are doing this in the market. So the issue of having your own observatory or outsourcing observatory services, this is important. Also, communication and collaboration with different regulatory bodies. You are speaking, for example, the Electricity Regulatory Authority, and this authority, in fact, has part of its name as and the protection of the consumer. The consumer. Also, there is the authorities that are responsible for water and sanitation and consumer protection. So you have consumer protection as cross-cutting issue, while you don't know what's the relationship between this place, or for example, the Electricity Consumer Protection Authority and the overall national consumer protection authority. And sometimes it's a good relationship, but just personal relationship between the head of this authority and that authority. Sometimes there was at some point of time there was something that was put on the electric meters in order to give lower readings, in fact. The so-called fake electricity card. And in fact, it was a good relationship, in fact, and that's why the head of the consumer protection authority sent it to the electricity authorities, and they know about this. The regulatory bodies, they talk together, but it was not institutionalized. It was personal relationships, in fact. And the citizens will not be keeping the consumer protection authorities numbers everywhere, so they will not be keeping like this is the consumer protection number for electricity, this is the consumer protection number for sanitation. They cannot do this. There's a need maybe for maybe a hotline, one number, one unified hotline connected in some way, so that a referral scheme may be applied inside. So if it's about electricity, so this hotline would refer you to the consumer protection body in electricity. But there is a communication. Maybe these bodies also would be the technical reference for technical issues, while having the National Consumer Protection Authority as being the overall umbrella. Another thing also is that we have thousands of NGOs all over this country who may play a role also in consumer protection. We had worked previously with the Governorate of Giza, and it was in relation to price disciplining. And in fact, there were some NGOs, it was particularly relevant to transport fares, and it was some NGOs were making sure that there are stickers put with the fare and with everything. So just one person from the consumer protection. So in fact, just one person. So it was done by NGOs, mainly by only one representative of the Consumer Protection Authority, and the rest were coming from NGOs. So NGOs will help you a lot. They help you because they are in direct contact with the grassroots. Article 42. In this piece of legislation, it tackles that the consumer protection is the responsibility that's given the legal powers, and it's under the line or relevant minister. So it's managed by a specific ministry. And Dr. Ahmed Darwish, in fact, had several times said or raised a question about the relation, how we have a regulatory body under a minister. Is it to be under the minister so that the minister would know the problem? Or does such a kind, do these regulatory bodies that are thematic regulatory bodies, do they need to be under the cabinet or under the minister? This is a question that has been raised. So as advertising company, maybe we have a product, and if we see the certificate of this product that it is really in conformity to the consumer protection, aspects. Here it's not technical. I'm not speaking about technical certificates. I'm speaking about consumer protection issues, because we have, for example, some people who come to you that they had a certification from outside Egypt, or but how we can make sure that they got already the certificates that they have. Also, the competitions that are there, you see in advertisements, or the sort of kind of call and pay things, or call and get money afterwards. So the consumer protection need to provide some sort of licensing or some sort of certification, so that, for example, it would see all the documents and say, yes, okay, you can advertise. So it would be like a green light to, or a green card to advertise, giving them that green light. You can advertise now because you have every conformity to whatever that needs to be uh, there. In fact, uh, this would be helping this authority to work a lot. These were the most important things that I wanted to talk about. Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you so much. All the suggestions are really, really very good, and they are important. Mr. Tarek, the floor is yours.
Of course, this law, with no doubt, is a major leap forward. And when it comes to consumer protection, it's a necessary mechanism for industry protection. Of course, this framework is not limited to consumer protection. It has to do with investment, safety, consumer rights, among other issues. These are a very brief list of outcomes. If I am a manufacturer, then I should be after the enforcement of this law, because I want to overcome this informal trade. We want to have a concept. Regulated industry should be for consumer protection. Second, the mechanism of this law is a missing part of our discussion, because informal economy is not covered. What if we have informal selling points of informal selling outlets? How can we enforce such a law? And the major risk when it comes to consumer protection is informal economy. That's why we need to develop the internal trade sector in order to be able to enforce the law. In other words, if we want to go to a selling shop, I get invoice. I have someone to go back to if something wrong happens. But if I get these products from an identified or not registered place, then I lose my rights. Even if we have the best laws drafts, with the presence of this informal economy, we cannot enforce the law. We can only hold the regulated bodies accountable. But what about the informal groups? Also, I want to speak about standards and specifications. This is to ensure the health and safety of the consumers and the environment. But what about the non binding standards? This is up to the consumer. I want to buy green or a red color. I cannot include that in the law. I'm not speaking here about the taste of the design of the cloth. Most of the specifications are non binding unless this has to do with health and environment. Also, I want to refer to the current situation when it comes to law enforcement, to engagement of NGOs. We need to have a look on the e-commerce or the services offered by Uber, for example. They have a self-imposed rating. If I had a ride and then I like the car, then I will give it 4 stars or maybe 5 star. And even the captain or the driver can rate the passengers. So this is a self-imposed regulation, and this takes us to the consumer protection. This is a different mechanism. If I go to Amazon or Su.com, then the first thing I do is to know about the rates or the reviews of such products. This trend should be governing because this speaks to the consumer awareness and the technology which will be prevailing in the coming future will help and will elevate the burden of the CPA because we reflect on the past, but we should have our eyes on the future. The map of the trade is changing, 100% changing. Also, I want to refer to the red tape reform. We need to do so. We shouldn't wait for the process to be finalized. We can do a lot with the ICT, with the information technology. There should be a shortcut to do things when it comes to products and services because we will depend more on electronics. So consumer rights, consumer awareness will be different. Now we have more than 100 million smartphones in Egypt, and internet is used by 40 or 50 million users. It's the main means to deal with data, to raise the awareness of people, and without awareness we cannot have consumer protection. That's my take on that. So most of the things you discussed will be a part of the past. This is the perspective we should all have. Another thing to have in mind is that regulated companies, all the mega companies, have a percentage of defect or return. They should not argue. If the consumer does not like it, I will get it. I will give him an exchange. This is the trend in the US. When you go to any shop, I will tell him I bought this 6 months ago and I don't like it. They don't negotiate it. They will just get it instead of a negotiation and having a legal case in the court. And this should be the trend all manufacturers take with the evolution of the e-commerce. This will be prevailing in all the different businesses available. Also, here I want to refer to regulating. The technology we have is a bit dangerous. Some technology can allow me to have senses because we have data mining, we have Internet of All Things, we have things that can control e-commerce, that control media. They can eliminate everything with mathematical algorithms. The supply and demand and customer satisfaction between suppliers and consumers should be governing. Of course, we have random unregulated satellite channels, but can you stop these channels? No. But you depend mainly on the customer's desire or discretion. You in all the societies all over the world you have tabloids, but the percentage of viewership matters. Some people love this kind of data, maybe 1% of the population, 10% of the population, and this differs from one society to another, and you cannot stop that. Then we should be able to accept that a certain percentage of the viewers will not believe whatever you say. So we'd better channel our efforts in this 80-20 theory. I cannot control everything. Social media is the main venue for awareness today. That's why when we talk about NGOs, the NGO should not go to the place and inspect the thing. The social media is a vehicle and a venue. The same way Uber self regulates itself or rates itself, this social media can be a platform for evaluating the products and services. And here comes the role of the civil society organizations, and they are still living in the past. They are not in line with the technology evolution, and that's an available opportunity because we have now more efficient venues to reach the customers. If you go on Facebook or any other social media web site, they can post about their experience, and this can serve as an observatory. And they have to check whether this is fake or a real complaint. Our mindset should be in line with the technology. Also, I want to refer to the executive bylaw. I disagree with you. I agree with consultant Hisham. The cabinet issued this executive by law, and this means that all the bodies were represented. Maybe the competent minister wrote that, but then all the ministers were represented later to discuss this regulation. Also, civil society organizations are represented in the Chamber of Commerce, in the Federation of Egyptian Industries. They are our partners when it comes to laws or executive regulations, and this consumer protection law changed. We had a different draft uh, which differed from the final draft. We had an effective role to play when it comes to modifying many articles, and this holds true for many laws that has to do with economy or consumers. And with all the guarantees and warranties available, it's I think it's enough, regardless of who issued what. Also, when it comes to keeping strategic products and the decree of the cabinet, I think this is part of the defective system. If we have a flow in regulated trade, keeping the product should be a relic of the past. But this is a feature of the informal economy because 90% of the outlets are informal. That's why we have middlemen, we have seizure and keeping of strategic products. And I think this should be part of the transition period due to the nature of the trade system. But sooner or later, with the evolution of the trade, this should be a relic of the past or something for the media to talk about. I think these are the main comments I have, and I wanted to refer to. But on a different note, the government services or industries should be covered by the law. Where do they fit here? We should all be keen to keep the same standards when it comes to services, regardless of the type of services offered, because this CPA should be independent, should be autonomous, because we want the play field to be level. We want everyone to be treated on equal footing. Dr. Abla, this is my comments. Thank you so much for giving me the floor.